Yeah, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Cromwell Coulson as our closing keynote speaker. Mr. Coulson is President and CEO of the OTC Markets Group, and that group operates the OTCQX, the OTCQB, and the pink sheet markets for 10,000 U.S. and global securities. A former trader, Mr. Coulson led a group of investors to buy the old pink sheets. And let me digress just for one moment. One of the things that, a little known fact, Cromwell and I have known each other for a little over 10 years. And we were talking about this in the hall. The way we met was a reporter from USA Today called me. And at the time, I was the head audit partner for Grant Thornton. So I was in charge of the audit practice nationwide. And that reporter said, so, you know, there have been some problems with pink sheet companies. What do you think about them? I said, we'd never accept a pink sheet company as a client. So Cromwell called me. He actually did two things. He called me. He told me why I was wrong. Very passionate about why I was wrong. He also called one of our clients who was on the pink sheets. Didn't care for that. But I was impressed. So what he doesn't know is that I followed what he's done over the years as a result of that one call. And I've watched him transform the old pink sheets from an opaque, inefficient, phone-based market into a modern, electronic, and transparent financial market. As I said, Mr. Coulson is a passionate advocate for improving access to capital for small companies and trading transparency, and has testified before Congress and spoken on these and other issues at numerous industry conferences. Today, he will talk about his experiences building transparent, data-driven trading markets for the U.S. and global companies, as well as his thoughts on the SEC implementation for XBRL and its impact on small companies. So please join me in welcoming Cromwell Coulson.
Thank you, Mike. Great, thanks, Mike, for introducing me. And it was very good that I was able to argue passionately, but having your client yank your chain seemed effective as well. And it also it showed some economics that actually even Big 10 audit firms audit companies on the markets at that time. And now we actually have more. And we actually now use Grant Thornton for our tax work. So, you should be getting a commission as you've got the first contact with us. But I want to thank Hudson and the Data Transparency Coalition for inviting me. I got to know the Data Transparency Coalition because a couple years ago I got to testify in front of Congress about unlocking access to small business capital formation. And I had about 25 things to do that should be done, and about 15 or 16 on the list was kill XBRL for small companies. And of all the ideas I threw out there, that was the one that got my phone ringing. And suddenly there are all these companies going, you can't do this. This is terrible. We've created this government mandate and we've got a whole business around it. So, and Hudson and the Data Transparency Coalition came in. So I was, not more of an opponent of the Data Transparency Coalition, but it was a short-term piece because I am very much about data transparency. And I think, in some ways, I was invited because of a unique position where Hudson didn't look at the data. I mean, he scheduled this on a Jewish high holiday. And then the Pope came to town. So there he is, and you can expect it because his name's Hudson Hollister. He's got two last names. It's a Protestant trick. So, of course, he very quickly recovered and said, who has the most other two last Protestant names I know? Well, Cromwell Coulson can come speak, I'm sure. And I came. So here I am, the guy with two Protestant last names as well. But I'm CEO of OTC Markets Group. We operate financial markets for 10,000 U.S. and global securities. It's electronically trading. Last year, there was over $230 billion of dollar volume traded in our markets. That's a lot of liquidity. we'd be, one of the world's largest stock exchanges if we were a stock exchange. We're registered as an ATS by the SEC, which is stock exchange light. We had 83 graduates to the major stock exchanges last year. We're the leading creator of exchange graduates in the world. The TSX Venture had 22, the AIM had 5. We've created 400 plus exchange graduates in the past 5 years. We perform a really important role in the US capital markets. And our mission has always been about creating better informed and more efficient financial markets. Our markets thrive on information and connectivity. Our strategy's been pretty simple. Just operate a world-leading securities market. We weren't there yet when we were the pink sheets, so we should be criticized. We needed to, work a little harder. And we do that by sharing information widely through open networks that foster greater transparency. We connect broker-dealers. There's a big part. Our market is a lot like what NASDAQ was 25 years ago with better technology and transparency. We're a network-based market, the network of the future. We might steal some of their old, the next network market of the 100 years. Maybe I have 20 years left doing this, but we organize our marketplaces, we inform investors, and we do it by delivering elegant, reliable, and cost-effective subscription-based solutions. How did I come to do this? I was a frustrated pink sheets trader. I was a trader of NASDAQ stocks, but I also was a trader of pink sheet stocks, and I hated the way the market works. Remember that guy for the electric shaver company who said, I love the company so much I bought it? I hated the product so much I bought it. And in fact, I tried not to buy it. At the time, I was a loyal Bloomberg user, so I was able to call up Michael Bloomberg, and this is back in '96. And I said, you should buy the pink sheets and put it on your screen so it's electronic. And he said, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard, and hung up on me. So I had to go do it. And I went along with trying to fix the market from a transactional side because it was a terrible market. It was awful. Brokers would have to call around to get prices and then call back to make a trade. It wasn't electronic, it wasn't transparent. If you weren't one of the firms the brokers called, you'd miss the trade. You could be bidding $5 a share for a stock, and you'd see it, and it could trade at $4 a share because someone didn't call you. It was an awfully designed market that should have gone away. So I wanted to fix it. And the part that I wanted to fix was the trading process. That was the part I knew. And I was really lucky because we were at this point in change where 2 technologies were coming along. One, IP networks, which you used to have these point-to-point dedicated connections that all the exchanges had, and they had their proprietary protocols that they used, and they had their own terminals at the end of them. It was very expensive, but the internet was coming along, and I didn't know this, but I was at the right perfect time to be able to build a much lighter weight market that could use internet technologies. Number 2, the securities industry had started to use probably what I think is the most successful tag data format in the world. It's called the FIX protocol. The FIX protocol is a way to communicate trade messages. It's open to the industry, and it is, when people talk about fragmentation, they talk about all this trading taking place in different venues. Blame it on IP protocols and the FIX protocol, because now you can connect very easily. If you're a broker and you want to connect to a new trading venue, you can do it in less than 24 hours. It's incredible. We've created a whole diverse ecosystem of markets through this new technology, through having a tagged data communication standard. And we used the fragmentation of our what used to be very opaque. OTC today, we want to be open, transparent, connected. Back then, it was opaque trading club, and it was a closed network. But we opened it up with technology, and we were really lucky. I went into the SEC, and I was holding this pink phone book, and I said, I want to take this electronic. And they said, good luck. Traders never like to show prices. Traders don't like transparency. They make money off having all the information. And they let me do it in a reg light experiment. They didn't put in a heavy piece of regulation. Now, we became successful. Now, if our system fails, they stop trading in all securities not on exchanges of all equities. So we're a highly regulated ATS. Our technology is regulated at the same level as the exchanges. But they let us grow into it. And that was really great because in the beginning, We could not have survived, thrived, made it under the regulatory environment that we are now, that we're part of the establishment. So that's important. And we are actually one of the very few ATSs that is regulated from a technology standpoint by the same as exchanges. But when I got to that, when we created this market electronic, it was actually around the time Mike and I had our interaction. The pink sheets had become this super Craigslist. It was really efficient for trading. I talked to very sophisticated users, and it's where I came from, was like looking at it from an investor standpoint. I wanted transactional efficiency, but I was willing to dig around for the information. Do the research, try and figure out on these companies that you couldn't find it easily. And I'd ask sophisticated investors, I'd say, what do I need to do to fix the market? They're like, it's great. The brokers can't rip me off anymore. I know where things are trading, and everybody's scared. I can do my own research. But I realized I wasn't helping the less sophisticated user. I needed to make information about companies more transparent. And that was harder. That was really complicated because there's a whole bunch of different disclosure standards that companies use in our markets. We have SEC reporting companies. We have a couple thousand of those. We have companies listed on foreign exchanges that report under their international standards. Roche, Adidas, Walmart de Mexico, huge companies. In fact, 70% of our dollar volume is ADRs and foreign ordinary shares of international companies that trade in our markets. We're the largest market for ADRs. 75% of ADRs trade in our markets. But that's hard to get all that information. It's out there in a different world. We also have 600 community banks. Their information, some are SEC reporting, most aren't. How do you get that? And then there's an exemption. Companies don't need to be SEC reporting in the US. So we had to create a new standard to standardize that, which we called the alternative reporting standard, and then we had a more basic level. Because our view was we want companies not to say every company needs to meet the highest standard, but we want companies to provide the most information they can. If a company's if a company has limited information, we want that limited information out there and to label it as that. But we also put in a simple market structure where before everything was pink sheets and you couldn't tell what was good or bad. We created 3 markets, and we created a top market called OTCQX, where you couldn't be a penny stock. You needed to meet the state standards for blue sky compliance and other financial standards. You needed to be sponsored by a professional third party to help with the trust and safety process. So we created what we like to think of as a comparable product to an exchange listing without the complexity, cost, and pain. And when we first did it, the guys from the New York Stock Exchange came in, and I'm sure they just laughed their heads off when they got back to the office going, pink sheets is going to sell listings. But we have 400 companies. 20% of our dollar volume now takes place in these companies. Roche is there. But we've created a market for community banks. We've got all these community banks. We've had 4 community banks go public this year onto OTCQX. And it's great because they can stick a sign in their lobby that says, you can see our price, you can see our disclosure. We've committed to provide consistent transparency. And we take the data, whatever way you provide your disclosure, and we actually have it converted into what I'd call an XBRL Lite. And so it shows up on Yahoo Finance, so investors get the information. We've also created a venture market, OTCQB, and it's very innovative because the US hasn't had a venture market. Canada has the TSX venture, London has the AIM market, and we're very competitive globally. The median sized company is $12 million. On the TSX venture, the median sized company is around 3 or 4 million. On the AIM, it's around 20 plus million. So we're right in the middle there, on liquidity, on other statistics. And the thing about a venture market is, it is not for companies that have it all figured out. It's got to be a place for riskier companies to be while they're figuring it out, to get a start, the basic market. And it's hard because we live in a world where we want to have a standard set, this is good, this is bad, or that's how the old world is. Now with data, you can kind of decide different levels of risk profiles. But that market's got 1,000 companies, and it is again, it's become a standard. There we focus on different things because these are for developing companies, and we focus on background checks of the officers and directors. We focus on confirming shares outstanding. Most of these companies are SEC reporting, and some are listed on exchanges elsewhere. But I do see it as a data problem because with small companies, you're really building your market for stock pickers. You want to give investors the information so they can make an intelligent decision. You don't need to have the heavy governance for the larger companies that investors have to own because they're in the major indexes. And that's, as we've driven our data. But there's a few lessons I've learned as I built this business. One, at first, you think you've got this great database, this information everybody wants. Nobody wants it at first. You have to put it on a screen for humans to see. And you should do it for free. Get as many eyeballs on it as possible, and then, if it's free on your website, that makes it more valuable to sell in a feed or a file. That's when people want to stick it into the machines. And a lot of businesses make a mistake is they restrict data. The bond market's like that. It's awful. You can't get any data, all the information. Now, the other part is, our markets are not as good as the exchanges today. In some parts, I think we're better because we have a dealer network. Small companies need liquidity. But in general, disruptive technologies are never superior to the status quo incumbents. And that's strange because you think disruptive is going to be better. It isn't. It's worse. But it's faster, it's easier, it's cheaper, and it's going to be getting better. A lot of times, you have to have this product that is an unused need. Is the status quo satisfied? You need to find the outsiders. And that's, and that's the hard part is, adoption is slow. It doesn't happen quickly. I mean, there's a classic thing is, we have all these ADRs that are connected to foreign currencies and foreign exchanges. So we build a technology to take an Excel spreadsheet, your feeds in of the foreign securities and the currencies, and you could price ADRs. And not one firm used it for 6 months. They all said, no, we want to update by hand our quotes. Now we have these huge computer algos, which, they're all updating millions of quotes a second. But at that time, it took us 6 months just to get them to move to a spreadsheet, because the adoption's tough. There was E-Trade had started a small trading desk, and they only had 2 guys. They were overwhelmed. They were the first guys to buy into the spreadsheet, and people said, how is E-Trade trading so many securities now? They only have those 2 guys. And then everybody wanted the spreadsheet. And then they started building their own pricing systems. But you got to find the first movers and the outsiders to work through the pain points because nothing works well at first. You got to get them in there. And new is often rejected by the people who become your best customers. I mean, when I went to take the market electronic, there was one group of people who said, let's do it now. There were some who said, this is interesting, let's have another meeting. Those were really big firms, and they weren't, and you never really got anywhere. I had another meeting for 4 years with Merrill Lynch till one guy just said, I'm going to stick it on my desktop and not tell anyone. And you can't do that now in the regulated environment, but I could then. And then there's some people who are like, I hate that idea, I hope you die. And the first group is who you have to focus on. Keep talking to the second group and smile and say thank you to the third. But that's the part. And, is also don't try and tell the market what to do. Figure out what it is using and give it more in the data world. You're never really sure what they're going to grab into. This is a real, a point is you want to know someone who's going to be terrible at running a market, people who want to tell everyone exactly what to do. And the market figures it out on itself. Sometimes it surprises you. Often you have an idea. Sometimes you're totally wrong, early, late, so it's much easier just, what are you doing? Here's more. Lighter disclosure may not be the problem we need to solve. And I think this is interesting because I look at the data of SEC, of fraud in our space. We have fraud still. We thought that we would get all the data onto screens. And, is, in fact, last month, 99% of our dollar volume, companies had current information available to investors. When I started 10 years ago, if I asked a regulator, they'd say, you'll fix this once you get disclosure on all the companies trading. It didn't happen. But when I look at the fraud data, it's actually 80% of the dollar volume that takes place is in companies that the 80% of the dollar volume that takes place for SEC suspensions is companies that had current information available through the SEC. So that's where our fraud risk is. And they choose SEC reporting versus not being SEC reporting. So those are, some of the pieces. And the final one I'd say is measured metrics can create monsters, especially for regulators. In our space, the SEC has a metric of how many suspensions they do. They suspend mainly companies that have gone late in SEC reporting. But that's less than 5% of the risk volume. So 80% the place is actually a smaller number of securities. So they should be really looking, how do we expand the number of securities that are current in reporting doing things bad now instead of things that have done something bad or could potentially do something bad in the future. But their metric is about suspensions. And you have to be really careful because when you put a measured metric in front of a government organization, they will go towards it, like a moth towards a flame, and they become blind. And we have to be really careful about that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my favorite subject, XBRL. I know there's some economics in the room, and there's some problems with the XBRL. And I start out with the point, and it's stolen from someone, but I couldn't figure out who it was, but be very wary of well-meaning regulators with good intentions. Those rules are the ones with the most unintended consequences. When it sounds like a great idea, and I'm one of the people who drank the Kool-Aid, XBRL is going to be awesome. This is going to be such a great thing. This is so good, we don't even need to be scared of it. I've learned in technology, whenever there is too much confidence in the room before rollout, something bad is going to happen. So the SEC introduced XBRL, which is tag data disclosure for SEC reporting companies in 2009. They mandated that companies report the financial data and in this tag data format while still reporting in their human readable format, which is, a paper document on a screen, really shows up in HTML or PDF or whatever you want, but it's a human readable one. So what you did was you doubled the disclosure requirements on companies, and you gave them one part that humans couldn't read. And that was the SEC's, and the complexity increased. So it was painful. And the implementation was very poor. The SEC did this rule, and they didn't use the data at first. If you go in, there's parts of the SEC process where calculators are heavily used, and it's the part that looks at SEC filings. I know this because, one, we are the source to the SEC enforcement division of companies that have gone late in SEC reporting because our database is better. Now, we weren't using the XBRL either. We were getting it from a vendor who pulled it off the filings and off the regular filings. But so XBRL became this part that nobody was using. We all know about data as if it goes in a closet, you don't use it, it becomes terrible, it becomes stale. And the data error rate was huge. And of course, people can talk about all the problems with XBRL and places, but investment professionals didn't use it. We heard on the panel, Morningstar does not use US XBRL data. But it's changing. The regulators are starting to use it, mainly because there's been a bunch of screaming about it, and they've realized that they need to move forward, they need to get there. But it's also created this huge hidden cost for small companies, not just of paying the vendors, which I think is, it's good in America, and the vendors have been very competitive, and their service has been fabulous, but the cost to the companies to support things. And you notice it's not just what we pay as a company, we pay our auditor Deloitte, it's how many hours my accounting staff has to support Deloitte as it goes up to those things. And XBRL is a big internal resource time suck. It's 40 hours for your annual report. I think, is something like that. It's a big amount for small companies. You know, if you've got a small company that's under 700 million in public float, you know, they've got a team of 4 people dealing with their SEC reporting on average, as high as 10. I mean, that's an incredible, you know, amount of resources that could be, you know, put towards making things instead of reporting on things to your regulator. And you've got these concerns. I mean, compliance risk for a company, I'm putting out this data, I'm not that great at it, is the market's not looking at it. And SEC comment letters. There was limited liability for a while, that's gone. And so companies are liable. And they also say, companies say in the survey, that their biggest bottleneck in doing their SEC reporting is XBRL. So we've created this thing which nobody uses, and we got to do better. And this is not something to say we shouldn't be doing it in tag format, but we need to get it right. And we need to figure out how to have the government get a reporting, which is so important to our financial markets, right. And the other big change, which nobody thought about, was the economics of the industry. When XBRL came out, there was already good data in normalized financial databases. There was, Bloomberg has an incredible database. They've got accountants in New Jersey. There's lower cost ones that have people tagging the data in India. There was a public company built around it, which Donnelly owns now, was Edgar Online, was a very good company. And, but the economics were the financial database providers were spending the money to tag and format the data into a normalized data structure. Regulation switched that. Now companies had to pay to deliver the normalized data, and it wasn't that normalized, of course. And we had a regulator who didn't look at the data for too long, and they didn't get it right. But you went from, I looked at Edgar Online's, revenue statements from before XBRL was created, and they were spending around $20 million a year in total costs. That was their whole total cost world to tag and database every SEC filing, and they did a lot of other things too. But even if I go with $20 million, we created the XBRL compliance business to corporates is a hundreds of millions of dollars business. Mike works at Workavit now, which is a great successful company, but we changed the economics. And I think we really have to be careful when we do regulation that we're not creating a giant cost on the economy, because we have 2,000 SEC reporting companies. If each one of those is paying, a vendor 10 grand a year, and they're spending 10 to 20 grand in internal compliance, that's $40 to $60 million that these small companies suddenly was brought in as a cost. So it's not all so bleak. The SEC is going to create the next version of technology where it's all going to be one page, one document, embedded, and we need to move there very quickly. And that's something that will really move us to where we need to be, because we do need tag data, we do need normalized data, but it is not easy to do. So before they do that, though, we should really exempt from liability everything except for the large accelerated filers from liability for their XBRL data. Have them keep supplying it, but just get rid of the liability. Take away the liability, make the document, the golden copy, be there human readable until we get it right from a regulatory system. The other part is we need to get the SEC to be using XBRL data fully throughout their organization. They're starting to, but they need to use it more. They need the tools, the staff needs to think XBRL before companies can report in XBRL. It's embarrassing that Morningstar is up there talking about how small foreign regulators with limited resources are much better with XBRL than the all-powerful SEC. We should be the best. And we also should have the SEC website be about getting the XBRL data out to investors. Not just be providing the human readable documents. But XBRL is something for us to be cautious about data, because we don't want people outside of Washington to hate data requirements. We want more data in the world. We want it out there. We want it easily available. We want data to be free. And I'll tell you, as much as XBRL frustrates me for companies in my market, The worst is companies trade on our market, if you have fewer than a certain amount of shareholders, you don't need to be SEC reporting. We've exempted that state regulation is how you should be regulated. Now, the state regulators are terrible about continuous disclosure. They have these state blue sky laws, which is, the last one was the Uniform Securities Act of like 2000 maybe, or I think it was 96. And what they use for continuous disclosure is a securities manual. And the securities manual is a book that you will find in your local library. So companies' disclosure, if you're not as SEC reporting and you buy into the state system, is you're going to the library, which is where information was before I came into the industry. So, and it's not updated on the time, and the states are totally terrible because what they did was some of them recognize only certain manuals in their state laws. So once that happened, those manuals stopped innovating on getting the information distributed to investors, and they just had a regulatory franchise. It's like, you have to buy our service because we're the one in the state bylaws. And the states fight blue sky preemption, but the states either need to fix the disclosure. If you look in England, every company, you can see their revenues, you can see their assets. Every company. We don't do that in the US, but if a company has shareholders, if it has outside investors, states should mandate disclosure. And trading, at some points we should pull the states out if they're not innovating, because trading is about is all interstate commerce, especially electronic trading. So, to sum it up, I'd really say as we talk about data, and this is something that's different from markets, when I came into the industry, if it was on the New York Stock Exchange, it was good, everything else was bad. And that's how we lived with information too. I mean, when I started, financial information was just delivered through paper. It was delivered through the, over the phone, face to face. You got your news through your local paper, TV station, or radio. It was these established, edited, controlled channels. And it was all, this is the right information, this is how thoughtful people should think. But now it's changed. We have a fire hose of different sources, of different credibility, and the consumer is supposed to figure it out. And it makes a lot of people really uncomfortable because there's good and bad information. Even though back in those old days, the New York Times had some things on their front page that was totally wrong. And we have to be about making it that we're going to have more information, that people can decide which information, their own choices, and let the market decide about information. Because I very much believe in the idea that greater market transparency leads to better investment decisions, better individual decisions, and not more rules. Whenever there's a problem in my markets, everyone says you need a rule to stop that. What we usually do is try and find out what information do the users need so they can avoid that problem. That fixes it in the long term. And that way, it lets them make good decisions and avoid bad outcomes. The more complete and reliable the information that investors have, the better markets work, and the benefits not only to individual investors but to society. Now, as I go, we have to also be careful about complexity. There's a French philosopher, and I'm not going to say his name because I'd sound very American, and is perfection is achieved not when there's nothing more to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. And, so we should try and keep things simple. But as Ernest Hemingway said, simple ain't easy. So that's the problem we have to solve as we create a more data-filled world that's not all stuck in a closet nobody's looking at. Thank you.